Hello and welcome back to Portrait of an Editor. I am Francis Lombard. In this episode of Cropped, Will Dennis and I try something different. Will brought Lee Loughridge onto the podcast to talk about his approach to coloring. We also cover Lee's day-to-day and monthly schedules, creating a palette for a new series, the physical toll of his work, the early days of digital coloring, and Lee's take on working at home. Sorry about the delays on getting new episodes out, but here we are, and I hope to do this on a weekly basis for some time. Welcome back to Portrait of an Editor. Enjoy this episode. Thank you. Will, with Lee on the line, you can finally ask him that question regarding what the hell does he do after you give him 30 pages to color.
I have no idea, Francis. Believe me. As I said, it's just like magic. I send it out, I sit back, and I check my other emails and wait for it to come back.
I was going to say, I just sent him off to Thailand. and then I get children, like, they're not that, I mean, they're prepubescent, but they're like 10 and 12, and then they do it. And then I put a little polish on it in an hour or two, and then charge Pornsack a bunch of money, and then I'm done. And then I'm on a podcast.
Sorry, I should have prefaced this call with saying that Lee, you're getting the Lee character.
Is it because their hands are small enough to really get the details down? Is that what you're saying?
I think just because they're children, they don't need much money.
Okay.
I don't know what your fascination is with small hands, but that was
just okay.
All right. If you want,
they can finally cancel this podcast, which would be great. This will be the last episode. This will be the last episode of Portrait of an Editor Cropped. This is actually the method to my madness to stop having to do this every month, was to get Lee on, and then we'll just get canceled, and that'll be the end of it.
I can get you canceled real quick.
I know. This is my fear. So, all right. So I got 30 pages of this final issue. Sent it to you. Generally tell you, okay, here's when we need to get it back. It's always, soon, obviously, but like, what happens then? Like, what do you, I don't spend a lot of time. We don't get on the phone. We don't talk it over. I don't generally,
Exactly.
So what's the process? I just sent you a thing saying you got 30 pages, like, and we need them in, a week, like, go, like, what do we do?
Well, maybe let me back it up a little. Let's say it's the first issue.
Okay.
Right? And then, so like, even with Pornsack, he sent me that first couple pages, and then I'll see the art. And especially for that book, I wanted to do something more simplistic, more palette driven, and just minimal modeling, that type of thing. But obviously I hadn't seen the art. So usually I'll see the art and pick a style I think will work best for that art without overpowering it or stepping on it. And luckily with Pornsack, I think I nailed it out of the gate. He was concerned about the dots mooring at one point, but it sure wouldn't happen. So, we played around with some pages a few times, and we got to it pretty quick. But, like Pornsack I've worked with for years, as you. And so he kind of knew what he was going to get, I think, when he asked me anyways. So usually I'll get that book in its entirety, and I immediately, that book, I flat a lot of it. And I don't know how in depth do I have to get with flatting for people, but it's usually someone preps the pages where trace around all the shapes. So it's like Charlie Brown has Caucasian skin with a yellow shirt with whatever, black shorts. And that prep a lot of times will save me, up to an hour. So when I get it back, I can just grab those selections and work much more quickly.
Are flatters like choosing colors at that point? Like in terms of, particularly when you're doing stuff where it's like this very could be a really small range of colors. And that's like a big part of it, is the kind of, working within a pretty narrow range of colors. Like, are they making those initial choices? Are you sending them stuff saying like, hey, this is, you're like, how art directed on your end to the flatter is it, or are they just literally circling the shapes and sending it back?
So I tell my flatter, E. Kneef, who's the best, I want everything vanilla. I want blue skies, green trees, green grass. You know what I mean? Like I want everything as like standard issue as possible. Don't flat anything as a night scene or a desert scene or anything like that. I'll do it. And then usually I'll work from there. But like with most of Good Asian, I flatted a lot of that because then the process changes. So like I'll take a scene out of that. And I was doing a lot of like making a lot of odd choices there. Like I did a hot pink noir night scene, which I thought would be cool. And I think it was. So I start with the brightest pink I have, which is just magenta 100. And then I'll go back in with selections or a brush at a specific opacity with a darker tone or, different tone at, maybe 30 or 40% and just start building it like a painting. So every day monochromatic. And then usually at the end, if I want to hit like a crazy highlight throughout the scene, I'll do that last. So it's just with his pages, I actually chose to flat most of it. I probably flatted 60% of that series because it was just, I like building the palette better that way. Because when it's flatted, like everything's vanilla, I've got to bring it back down to that monochromatic style, which, it's not that easy to do without it having look like you're really cheating, when you go back.
You're working in Photoshop, is that right? Yeah. And now, so will you select like a range of colors to kind of work from, or are you just pulling from like every color that ever was color, kind of thing? Like, do you have like anywhere like a tool or a template someplace that's sort of like, okay, I want to, like, I know the general main colors I want to work within, or, I mean, how,
I have a specific, like my, static palette, but if I'll look at a scene, if it's 4 pages, I'll go, all right, I want this entire scene to be teals with a pale yellow highlight. And I'll usually do that last. So then I'll dictate that scene. I'll color the entire pages teal green first. And then I'll start building. So I'll build it forward first, adding colors on top of that. And then I'll separate my planes last, for middle background. And then at really the final thing I'll do is add that, especially with that book, I'll add some odd highlight, that's coming from maybe sometimes a fake light source, just to give it more of a hit and more drama.
Right. Yeah. Like definitely like Pornsec and I, even from our Vertigo days, would always much more prefer to lean on colors like that could make dramatic moments, like, kind of sing a little bit better, even if it was outside of the range of like the natural colors that you might otherwise have in a scene. Like some people don't want to like break that, bubble of like, it's all this color and it's all natural and it's all whatever. But it's like, he definitely asked for a lot of that. We'd ask for a lot of those things, and particularly in books like this. And I know like on the Losers, we used to do it too, where it was just like, just make this background like hot pink, he said, or bright yellow, something that's just totally out there because it puts this like stamp on that particular moment that you're trying to highlight for the reader, And how much of the script are you engaging with? Like if you have a copy of the script, I mean, the scripts, they may indicate day, night, etc. But like, I mean,
I read the whole script. So I'll skim, like if I start a book, I'll go scene by scene, and then I'll usually, it depends on the book. Like I'll look at all the art first and see how many scenes there are. Because I don't want to pick some weird ass palette that's going to be 18 pages. You know what I mean? So I definitely will think about where we're headed. But I'll usually look at all the art and then break it into those scenes from the script. But I love notes, daytime notes, nighttime notes, all, the alarm goes off, everything's bathed in red. Tell me that, but yeah, I definitely will read the script. I think it's important because there's always something, there's always a note.
How much work have you done, prep work or conversation have you done at the beginning of the series or even throughout the series with the artists themselves?
Not a ton, really. A lot of times, like I'm just starting a book now where like I just sent him 2 pages, from one scene. And I just said, this is the tone I think works for this. What do you think? I love it. Now I go. And so I guess the artist will just have to trust, hey, if you like those handful of pages, now trust me to finish the book. And then we'll know after that, if he or she have any edits after that, we'll go with it. But I think I've done this long enough where you kind of know what you're getting, or, why the hell are you calling me?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, as you said, like at the beginning, it was like backing up to the first issue, like there's conversations with the writer and the colorist. There's often conversations with the artist and, all of the team together that, a lot of times, like as the editor, I'm always trying to gauge how much involvement do they want? How much involvement should they have? You never fully, the times when I've given like an artist full reign to deal with it doesn't generally end very well, because I haven't really met yet the artist that's 100% happy with the end result they get,
Right.
And oftentimes, like, sometimes then they'll go on and like, oh, I'm going to color myself. And sometimes it works. And sometimes it's a total shit show, later on, like when they want to take over the reins, because particularly when you're dealing with people like Lee, who make the end product look very simple, when in fact it's clearly, obviously, there's like a lot of thought and planning and experience that goes into making it look that way. And I think that's true in comics in general. Anytime that something looks very simple, whether it's like a Darwin Cook or a John Paul Leon, or like the way Lee colors those things, it looks simple to the outside person, but in fact, like that's the most difficult step. Like drawing every blade of grass is actually a lot easier than like what like a John Paul Leon would do in terms of taking away all of that and just showing you what your brain needed to see to connect the dots as you read it, sort of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. It is always, for me, I don't feel like I really know what I'm doing when it comes to coloring stuff. So for me, it was always just hire the best people and then let them do it. And then I can go back to sleep, or I can go back to whatever the hell it is I do all day long,
Yeah, we won't get into that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We're going to be, this thing will never see the air, but but there are other editors that, shall remain nameless, who like want to go in there and like, knock out every panel and go dive into every choice you've made and that sort of stuff. And I don't feel like I ever was enough. I don't have a background in this kind of stuff to know, how to necessarily art direct that stuff. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's like there is a lot of preliminary stuff that happens, and some of it's formal and some of it's informal. But then once you get going, I think you're right. It's like you just show them the 2 pages and say, what do you think of this approach? Like if you showed them 22 pages, like their head would probably explode and you'd be spending 6 months like trying to interpret notes and deal with the shit and, navigate the personalities involved and everything,
Yeah, and some artists are picky, I'll do that and then send the issue off, and then they'll have a lot of notes because, I think some people have a hard time. What's in your head you perceive as the right way, and then you hand it off to someone else. It's hard for some people to step out of that and go, well, no, that it's different than I had in my head. But some guys will let that go and go, yeah, I'm going to trust them. It's not exactly what I thought. It's like when someone draws a scene, it might not be what you had in your mind when you wrote it, but it may in fact be better, or it may be equal.
Right.
But it's also that person's interpretation of what it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always saying to that, like we just started working with a new writer on a couple other projects and he's coming over from like the music business and doing stuff. And he's really trying to learn a lot of stuff from the ground up. But that's a big conversation with me, is just sort of like, at the end of the day, like no one's going to get exactly what they want. It's like, this is the problem we have in society, is just like in terms of compromising on whatever it is. It's like, you got to give up a little bit. So whatever it is, it's not going to look exactly drawn like you see it in your head. And the artist is going to feel like it's not exactly colored the way maybe he wants it or she wants it. And, ultimately but like you said, the end product can often be better than, where you had it, started from the starting point. But
yeah, I think so. That's why it's a collaborative, right?
Yeah.
You're also dealing with economics too, because you're closer to the deadline.
Oh yeah.
You have a long history of work, and then also the economics where the colorist sits at the deadline, that making decisions and having the luxury of being able to work things over again has disappeared, or, depends. It really depends if the other folks, in front of you kept their deadlines, but still, you're still getting crunch times getting closer and closer. So, having that freedom to be able to make decisions and not be second guessed probably allows you to be as creative as you possibly can be under the stress under the deadlines that you're under.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I'll usually like judge how I'm going to approach a project right around the time I get issue 1, because if issue 1's already late, I know where we're headed, and I know I'm not going to have a lot of time. So, and again, I always try to steer more simplistic, provided the art needs it and or allows for it. But I'll usually keep things sometimes, like you're saying, for economic sake, because I know we're in trouble. If we're already like, if you're giving me 5 days issue 1, then I know that by issue 3, I'm going to have 2 days, 3 days.
I famously quote Lee to everybody who will listen to me, that he told me years ago, shit rolls downhill. That was his favorite. That was his famous quote to me, when it would, when
I came up with that quote. I was the first one to ever come up with that quote.
Trademarked it like March Madness, I think, actually. But and it was just sort of, it served me well over the years when it comes to it. Lee is a guy who like never really chirped about that kind of stuff, always understood kind of where it was at. And I've definitely used those words over the years to people in terms of, and it's not just like, oh, want, like, sorry, shit rolls downhill kind of thing, but just the sense that, like, as you say, like, someone's got to have to pay for this, So even if I've used it over the years as a bludgeon against, a writer that couldn't get their act together, or an artist who couldn't get the pages, and it's like, look, there's all these other people counting on you, not just to deliver the work and deliver it and make this work as great as it can be, but they're also counting you for like a livelihood. Like, they were planning on getting that payment this month for, whatever the issue is, not like the 3 months that you need to wait for the muse to descend to get your goddamn pages done, So, I mean, it's definitely, I've definitely quoted that many, many times over the years,
And there's also the other thing that you mentioned, that at the beginning you wanted to use a limited palette with the good Asian. And so, right. But whereas there are moments of discovery, saying like in the first and second issues, but as the series progressed and you're up to what I think the run was 10 issues, or
correct,
12. So did your palette get even smaller, limited, or were you able to just sort of zero in on what you were going to use, and then, okay, this is a night scene in a nightclub, I bring this back,
if it's the same,
it's in the script.
If it's the same location, yeah, I'll bring it back. But if not, that can get you into trouble too. Like if someone writes 15 night scenes in 5 issues, it's tough to get around all of it. But no, I think that book, that book was a blast. I could do that forever. That's a treat. Like a book like that, or Deadly Class, that's like right in my wheelhouse. But like Will said, it does move quickly after the initial palettes are done. But there's a good amount of thought. And I've done stuff where I've done scenes and then I'll go back and change it entirely when I'm finished, because it's just not, I don't know, it's not working for me. But it is easier to tweak that kind of stuff when it's simple rather than full dipped in oil modeled stuff.
So like when so you do the flatting, you get the stuff, you've established the palette. I mean, what are you looking at in terms of like working hours, working days? You work do you try to work like in a certain, time of the day? Do you try to work like a regular 9 to 5?
Yeah,
Do you try to, I mean,
no, I have strict hours. So I get started in the morning immediately, and then I'll go nonstop till noon or 1. So or noon sharp. I did start eating at like 12:01 today.
Yeah.
But I get like a 4-hour stretch, no interruptions to get going. Then I eat lunch, then I come back up, and that's usually after lunch. I'll do corrections or
after dinner,
other stuff like that, and then I'll probably from 2 to 5. If I'm not slammed, I'll go surf or do something I want to do that day. But then I'll work after dinner every night, whether it's more color or writing. But I'll go back to it usually from like 7 to 9 or 10. That's usually where I play catch up or just prep stuff for the next day, or but I enjoy it.
You famously ran the studio for years with all these other guys in it.
Right.
Was that run more or less the same way? I mean, or was that just open and people could come and go and work whenever they needed to work? Or
I wanted to make it like that. You want to be that free dude, oh, I'm cool, I get it. I eventually gave them hours. I was like, you have to be here between 10 and 3. Like, you can't just be here whenever the hell you want, because we have deadlines, we have stuff to get done. So I was like, just give me 5 hours where we're all here at the same time. You can come in at 8, you can leave at 6, but 10 to 3, you have to be in-house. Because we were doing tons of stuff then, like archival reconstructions. We did all the scanning and all the layout and all that kind of stuff.
And that studio has had a huge impact on, the list of people who work for you is pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
In terms of gone on to other stuff.
Yeah, I build giants, Right. No, there was. In that, because that was in Savannah, so I had Savannah College of Art and Design, and I would get the best people,
right?
And there wasn't many, that department wasn't that big, so right. I had a guy, John Proctor. He knew Nick Dragata, who got me Jason Marsloff. And then we got like Christian Donaldson and like everybody, Nick Filardi, a bunch of people.
Was Matt Wilson in there for a while?
Matt Wilson was one of the last guys. So Nick,
he was at the end, right?
Yeah, Matt came to visit, and I gave him a little studio tour, and then Nick was leaving, and then Matt left, and I hit him up a couple days later, and I was like, please come. I know you were thinking about moving here. I have a job. Like, he was basically like my number one. Matt was good from the start. He needed a little coaching, but Matt was really good right away. He's one of the best guys.
He is one of the best, and he's also he's very. I respect the fact that he's very strict about like his time, which at times can be like I wouldn't say frustrating. That's too negative, but like he's very honest about like when he has time to do something or how long it's going to take or other things. And but he's also proactive. And I think these are the kind of things a lot of these guys and a lot of the guys I work with, who work with you and stuff have a somewhat similar, like even just this past week, we just were starting to ramp up again the next round of this Undiscovered Country book, which has been a little stop and start. And he just out of the blue sent me an email saying like, hey, I know we're going to start doing this sooner than later, but like, here's what my next 2 months kind of look like. And, here's what it's going to look like between now and summer for me. So I'm not saying I can't do it or I don't want to do it, but like, just, the get it on Thursday, return it on Monday shit, like it's not going to happen because I've got these other commitments, which is for me, it's great because it's just sort of feel like, okay, good. Now I can use this to go back to the rest of the team and say, here's where we are. Here's where Matt is. You want to keep Matt, who's like one of the best in the business on this book. Well, then here's what we need to do to get script, or here's what we need to get the art,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I may have had something to do with any of all that, because I was always so strict on schedules and getting your time and having, building that. I've come from the now more than ever now. I'll say yes to most things, even if I'm slammed, because I know if I'm doing if I have 8 projects running at one time, which I do basically right now, I'll take on more stuff, because out of those 8, 6 are going to run late, and 2 are going to run horrendously late.
Right.
So it's cool to build those schedules, and I'm not saying Matt's not wrong, because Matt knows his system and I know my system. But there are no more like 24 issue runs of comics. Rarely, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like in our world now, it's 4 to 6 issues, and they're going to spend a freaking year on them. So, I mean, I just did a second issue of a book that I did issue 1 in May
of last year.
Correct.
Right.
I'll take work, and if I get into trouble, I'll get into trouble. I'll pay for it. I'll just have to work way more. But I'm also fast, and not to say that I do everything simply. Like I'm doing Action Comics, and that's full model over Federici, and that stuff's beautiful. Yeah. And that takes me some time. But that book I work on as pages come in. So I'll work on that while I'm working on other projects. So the more modelly stuff, I know, like, well, this is going to take me 3 times as long as a page of Good Asian. So I'll do it as it comes in, and then by the time I get page 22, I've already got 21 done. And I also know I'm getting page 22, probably the day of print.
Right.
So I'll do it that way. I like working on multiple things at one time. I'll have my main project from 8 to noon, and then I'll jump on that other stuff in the afternoon or that night.
You were talking about the extra work. Do you have anything else you wanted to add to that regarding how you schedule things out and take on more work than you really usually have to? But sometimes you also are willing to pay if you get caught behind. Well,
by pay, I mean, if I get caught behind, I'm just going to have to grind.
You don't have anybody else other than Flatters working for you?
Yeah, it's just me.
Along that line, seeing we went back to that, is that one question, like when you're looking at pages, either when you're getting them or flatting them, or is there a point in your process when you go, I am only going to give this page a certain amount of time because of where you are, deadline, or for all various factors that we've talked about that? So you do look at a page and go, do you ever overestimate or underestimate it?
No, I mean, I've done enough now. I mean, I know I can go into a book and make it look crazy, but we just, as a team, we don't have that kind of time. Like, I don't know how some of these books, like these people that are doing this super high model stuff, I don't know how they have a life to get that done. And for a monthly book, to me, it makes no sense. It doesn't make the story any better. Like there are simpler ways to get through it and make it look good. Make a great looking comic. I don't know. For me, it's always, I have to guesstimate what kind of time constraints I'm going to have on that series. And I usually know during the rollout how it's going to play out. And I'm 99% right each time. So I know how it's going to come out. And again, I always default to something a little more simplistic, even if it's modeled, but a quicker way to model it. I just don't prefer that really blown out style. That's like pop music to me. It's just not my thing. And even with the Action Comics, that works more. That I really enjoy modeling, but they let me use my palettes. They don't step on me. And I've been stepped on with books where they're like, you got to make it brighter, and it's a superhero book. And, I don't know. I've watched a lot of superhero movies, and they're pretty monochromatic. They'll get colorful, but, they're like, this isn't what it would look like. It's like, it's a fucking comic book. Just relax. It'll be great,
Right.
I mean, we were just talking about the Batman, and that's one thing we really didn't talk about is how dark the thing is. It's even darker than what Nolan was doing, and that was pretty dark. And just
to me, it's pacing, right? It's like, why do I want like a rainbow throughout an entire book, and like every character looks like they're soaking wet, shiny? Then there's no drama. So if you have a whole book where everything's dark, everything's whatever, maybe it's monochromatic gray, blue, and then this moment happens, it's a much bigger moment, like cinematically. And I think, but it's just different tastes, I guess.
Do you feel like you have to approach coloring getting out of the way of the reader? Because like thinking of like what Scott McCloud talks about in, the panel, the gutters of letting, the reader uses their imagination, and you're just there to really kick them in the right direction. Do you take coloring, is that the way of like, I don't want to bog down the reader, let their mind work with what I give them?
I want to entrench you in that scene, through color. But I'll also make you look at what I want you to look at, and what that's what the artist wants you to look at. You know what I mean? If I don't know, some fucking a light's blinking on a cell phone in the corner of the dark room, we'll make sure you see that. You know what I mean? It's simple stuff. But that's where I don't like the full model stuff, because you don't know what the hell to look at. Everything is just an explosion of color, and I get it. People get excited. Like I remember, to go back to Matt Wilson, he did a book for Remender. What was that book? It was like one of Matt's first books on his own, and it was beautiful. I can't remember what it was, but Matt, holy cow, did he do such an insane job. And I remember going, hey man, you got to do that for like 12 issues. Like you've literally painted yourself in a corner where you've got to keep up that level, and you're going to run out of time. And he got through it. And I'm sure he paid the price, time wise, where he had to put in a ton of hours to make it happen. But it's also, that book opened up every door for that guy. Book was insane. What he was doing, I was like, holy shit, you just cruised by me. But that's, and I've been in those situations too, with DC doing some superhero stuff where I'm like, I'm going to make this look nuts. I think I did like Superman, Batman for a run. And it took forever. And I was like, holy cow, I'm spending like 6 hours on a page. You can't make a living like that. And that, to me, that's it. That's the pragmatism of the work and getting it done and making a living and not killing yourself. And luckily these days, I think there's so many styles, and, now real alternative art is accepted, stuff that's genuinely ugly art, which I prefer. It's a little easier now. I think it's where the scope is much broader.
Also, your approach, does it feel like you're saving yourself physically? Because, there's a physical work that you're doing and sitting at a desk and everything. And, there's groups talking about what an artist goes through and sort of their body goes through. Is that something you're dealing with too, and just trying to save yourself because you got to get up tomorrow morning? And
I'm just not a baby about it. Those guys need to get off their asses and do something. So
it's the New Jersey Lee talking.
Yeah.
No,
it's terrible, like being in the chair, but I'm always there. No one will see this on a podcast. I'm standing. Usually when I take a phone call, I walk, 2 to 4 miles a day while making phone calls. Like, and then surfing really helps. And then I do a therapy. I get crazy sports therapized. I've got a girl that beats me up, every week, and I stretch like crazy. And I know what I need to do to not feel like hell in that chair, because it'll beat you up, like sleepless nights. I mean, it takes a toll if I don't do what I should be doing. So like being active, getting in the water is what saves my life. And lately I've been going with my son. He's big into free climbing, and it's hard as hell, but man, I feel so good after that. It just stretches you out, and like you have to move. If you get out of the chair and then go lay on the couch, you're doing yourself a disservice. But it's I mean, it's as white collar as white collar gets. I hate to bitch about it because there's people that actually work for a living, but it does take a toll. But honestly, if you balance it with good stuff, you're fine. And I have to, like I do a core thing every day. Do I want to do it? No, but it makes me feel 30-40% better. Yeah, that's how I get around it. And but I've had years where I didn't, where I just sat there and got fat and felt like hell. And I'm not a spring chicken.
Well, that's one of the beauties of being around a long time is that, like you said, I mean, it's like, I think at any moment, like I might have I think I have 24 projects, like technically like on my docket at any one time. I mean, at my highest points at Vertigo days, like I think everybody had 3 to 4 monthly books, and maybe you had a handful of mini series, and you might have had a couple of graphic novels on the go. But they could take 2 years. I probably 3x or more like the typical workload. But it's because, like you said, it's like I can look at this and say, like, okay, this is, it's never the thing that's like right in front of you that's the problem. It's like being able to project down the road. It's not issue 1 that's the problem. It's issue 4 that's going to be the problem, or issue 17 that's going to be the problem, because you can look at a calendar and say, okay, this is how long it's going to take. This is where we are. This is how you're producing. This isn't going to get better. It's only going to get worse. So, like, what are we going to do now to kind of mitigate? But, a lot of people don't want to, they want to just do it and try to get it done and get, it's like, that is one of the benefits of having done it a long time, is to be able to just look at like a slightly longer term view about some of that stuff. Yeah. The physical nature of it, it doesn't seem like for a job that's not particularly physical, it's definitely, you see the toll on people. Like, and when we see these people year in and year out, and maybe you only see them once a year. I mean, there's some people that keep their shit together and seem to do it. Yeah. And there's other people you're like, wow, like what happened?
There's
like what happened to you this year,
Yeah. You have to have a balance. I mean, like you're right. I mean, it took 25 years probably took me 20 years to realize that balance fully. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing. Like I got, back when I got into it, I was one of the early digital guys, right? I mean, there wasn't many of us. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of had carte blanche, like work was pretty easy to get. Then when now everyone has a Cintiq or a tablet or Photoshop, I got really nervous about that. And then it got way more competitive. But now I've noticed there's even more work, because I think a lot of those people, they didn't want to put in the 5 years, maybe it's 5 years, to get really fast. Mm-hmm. And now they're out, or they're too slow, or they're over modeling things and spending too much time, and they realize this sucks, because it does. Mm-hmm. I mean, 8 hours on a page is the most unfulfilling thing ever. A lot of them just fell by the wayside. They just can't put the time in the chair, or they just don't have the discipline to get it done at home. So, and a lot of people don't work well at home. I do.
It's definitely, I can totally relate. I mean, I've been doing it at home now for 7 years, and I would say I'm used to it. I don't like it. I'm not happy doing it. I've never gotten into the spirit of the kind of, like you said, I mean, I'm very regimented about the time that I work and the time I don't work. But yeah, it just like, I need like the interaction. I need the people. I miss like the office drama. I miss the navigating the waters of like all of that kind of stuff. And I think I probably always will at this point, like if I haven't gotten used to it now. So even watching all these people in the last 2 years kind of grapple with working from home, and everybody was like, oh, we're just working from home, it's fun and you have freedom, and it's like it's an adjustment for sure, and some people, I don't feel like personally I've ever fully adjusted to it, and I don't know that I ever will, but I don't think I could last in an office like now anymore either. So
yeah, because an office is just a big time waster, right? You're right. Conversation, right. It's good, it's healthy, but a third of your day is wasted. For me, I'll go out. I'll go to a fucking dive bar, or go see a show, or go see music. I'm always trying to get out of the house at least 3 times a week, if not more. Because even my girlfriend's always like, "Why do you got to go out?" And I'm like, "Because I've been here, but I don't office again. I don't. I'm good. I like my alone time. Just being quiet, getting it done, locking into that zone. Because that's the thing. If I don't start right away in the morning, say I wake up and I don't know, my son's car breaks down and I got to go fix it, I'm screwed that day. I'll never be able to dial back in.
I'm the same. Like, I just feel like I'm chasing those hours, like for the rest of the day or the rest of the week or whatever it is. Yeah,
it's tough. And I've spent many years where you get behind and then it drives you crazy mentally, where now I have I'm better at turning it off. But I mean, I always do snippets of work all the time, even on weekends. I'll work till noon. Why not? I like doing it off the morning, wake up and do some pages or, do corrects. I feel like I need to feel like I've done something so I can just go relax. Like, I feel guilty if I have a day that I've done nothing. It's pretty rare.
Like, people who are starting off, they got their day job and then they're switching gears and trying to be creative and trying to promote a career. But like what Stephen King talks about is, like, he writes every day because you have the luxury of being in the zone, and you determine, your body gets used to it. I think your mind and body gets used to having whatever rewards come from putting in 4 hours of knowing that maybe you got ahead of a problem, maybe you just got ahead of on your schedule, so now it frees up more time for a bit creativity. But you maintain that schedule allows the muscles to just sort of, they don't get, I don't know, they stay there, they keep getting used, and they don't start going, oh, now we can just sit on the couch or whatever. And I can see, like, when you get thrown off your schedule, do you nowadays, instead of deal with the frustration, do you just, like, I'm going to write today off and jump right back into the pool tomorrow? I mean, have you, like, gotten to that point, like that maturity or that sort of awareness?
I'll blow off the whole day. I'll jump in the car and, like, I'll say, I'm going to Laguna. I'll go surf. I'm just going to screw off. I'll work tonight. I'll get in the zone later and then, get on it tomorrow. But I never get too far behind because I know what that does to me mentally. Like, I've got my quota each day, and I'll hit it 95% of the times, and 90% I'll pass it. Because that night I'll go, I might as well get ahead. What's the worst thing I'm going to do? Get ahead.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody will think you're like this,
Well, we do. Believe me, we do. No, I say,
all you do is
I jokingly say this about Lee. I don't know if I said it to him. I've said it on other things. It's like, Lee is the most unprofessional person in comics. That, like, when you meet him personally and spend time with him, he can really push a lot of your buttons. He can be relentlessly sarcastic, funny, borderline offensive, et cetera, et cetera. But there's very few people I've come across in 20 years plus doing this that are more professional when it comes to, being on the job, hitting deadlines, exceeding the deadlines, doing it, like, collegially, doing it cooperatively, doing it collaboratively. I mean, I honestly, I was thinking about it leading up to this. I'm thinking, I can think of the guys, like, I was lucky enough to work with, like, a Joe Kubert. I worked with Eduardo Risso for 20 years. Lee. I mean, there's other people who I love, I adore, I consider friends, et cetera, but they don't check a lot. They don't all check all those boxes, in terms of the professional side of stuff. Like, they can be great at certain things, but they're late as hell, or they can be kind of a little bit, they spend too much time online sniping at people, or they spend too much time getting stressed out about stupid shit that's out of their control, and it's like, so there's this very, very, very select group of people, in my experience, that, are in that zone. And Lee is such an enigma, not an enigma, but such a funny, there's a dichotomy there of, like, the Lee that, if you go out and hang out and spend time with and have beers with and all the rest of it. And then this other guy that he's been talking about now. I wanted to have you on here, like, the first thing, because it is fascinating to me that how somebody who can act like such a total jackass can be such an amazing, talented, professional guy who's, like, saved my ass, like, more times than I can count in my career, and could never pay back, like, the professional debts I owe you.
Willow, are we about to kiss?
Are you about to kiss me? Put your hand up to the screen.
You about to kiss me?
Yeah, but see, I
98.
For years, I spent years like the Lee Wrangler at like San Diego when we'd all be hanging out and he would start to like cross some line and I'd have to like be like, hey, can we like tone this down a little bit? And there was one year famously when I wasn't there and people were calling me saying, oh my God, why aren't you here? Like Lee just said X, Y, or Z, or he just did this. It's like, you need to, can you, like literally people texting me saying like, what should we do?
Yeah, that was
I was just like,
that was a much higher testosterone count back then.
Yeah, we all were guilty of that for sure.
I'd have my morning wake up feeling that dread. I'm like, oh, I'd offended everybody. Why did I smash the bottle of Jack Daniels all over Torello and Darwin?
Oh, I know. The magician. You know that magician character? I know. But anyway, well, we don't have to kiss, but that's all 100% accurate.
We're lucky to work in this business. So my theory is, I think this is just my speculation. I feel like probably 40% of the work I get is because they know I'll get it done. Maybe I wasn't their first choice visually, but they know, you know what? He'll do a good job and he'll get it done. We don't have to worry about him. We can just go to bed. He'll finish it. Mm-hmm. Because, and I want to save deadlines. I want to save the book. I want to get it out. And again, and I want the money.
Mm-hmm.
This is a job. So the more I do, the more I make. And I have expensive hobbies. I've really been in fentanyl. Have you heard of that?
Using it or cooking with it, or what are you doing?
I cook it. I mainline it right up. That shit is good.
You're the Orange County king of fentanyl.
It's good. It keeps you skinny. It gives you energy. It's nice.
It does keep you skinny, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But that is true, because years ago, Axel Alonso, who I work with and you've worked with and know quite well, I mean, his big mantra was always like, this is commercial publishing. Like, don't get it twisted. We can make these books great. He's worked on great books. He's done amazing stuff. At a certain point, he used to just be like, look, you got to ship it. Like, you got to get these in. They got to come out. If you didn't get it this month, like, let's get it next month. Like that, I mean, as like a younger person in this business, like that was a huge impact on me. Just the idea that like, they're not all home runs. And like, sometimes it isn't what you want it to be, but like, let's get it next time. But let's get it, because otherwise it doesn't mean anything if it comes out once a year. It's like, who cares?
You can't be too precious about it. I mean, that's for like the graphic novel you're going to do that you spend 4 years on. It's tough. Everyone wants to do the best they can, but it's just an easily digestible story, 20-minute read, move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Axel's right in that way, but I mean, I still like a beautiful book.
Sure. And then 99% of them are, but yeah, it's good to keep in mind.
Were you a fan? Were you
a
reader growing up and had that? Yeah.
No. Mad Magazine, Wacky Packages. That was the closest I could get to it. I liked stop motion stuff, Rankin Bass, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I was never really into it. I think the first book I read was the first book I did. I had no idea. I got into one of my first series was Green Arrow. I loved it. I thought it was such a good book. I had no idea. I didn't have friends that read. I grew up in a small town. It was never there. I never really took it seriously either, because comics, I'll probably get hate for this, but I mean, they kind of were cheesy back in the day, and they didn't look great. Like when I was getting into it, what really pushed me over the edge was Spawn and how insane that book looked. So for me, as like an art school kid, I was like, I want in on that. I don't want in on like a Jim Aparo Batman, but like a McFarlane Spawn, please. And especially what they were doing color-wise, it looked. I mean, that book was insane. That changed the game, right? So, and again, it was also like, could I pencil? Yeah, would it take me 10 years to get good? Maybe meaning good. I was too slow. Inking, I was too slow. Color made sense. I could get through pages, and I knew I could be better than 90% of the people that were doing it because the color pretty much was terrible back then.
Yeah, and the digital stuff was big too. You were definitely early on because I mean, even in those early days when we first were working on stuff, Trish Mulvihill was doing 100 bullets. Like she would still, like literally when Riso's pages would come in, I'd make 2 copies on like linen paper, reduced down to 9 by 11 linen paper or 8.5 by 11 linen paper. And they had special reams of this paper set aside for the colorist. And she would come in by hand, collect the 2 copies, and then take them home, use like Doc Martin ink on them or something, and then indicate like in the margins
the color code,
the color codes, and then we'd send them off to like Heroic Age or these other places, and maybe Xylenol too, to do the separations.
Xylenol
based
later,
on,
Yeah, it was Graphic Color Works first over in Ireland.
Right.
Because I did hand guides for like into like 3 or probably into 4 years. I did it, but I was doing digital into like probably my 3rd year because once I saw Hollingsworth was doing it, I was like, I knew I had to get a machine and go. And even Torello was like, "You've got time, man. It's not going to turn over for a while." But I definitely wanted to be ahead of that. And Matt was a huge help. He was really cool about it, and he gave me a lot of got me out of a lot of binds. But even that, for the first book I worked on came out, that I did digitally. I mean, it took me forever. Holy crap! I was like, how am I going to do? I mean, a page would take 6-7 hours, and then I got a partner to do backgrounds. That didn't work. I guess it was the earliest days of figuring out flatting, and then I told that partner, well, you just do normal color, and then I'll come in and model everything and change the palettes. That's sort of how it started. I don't know that. I don't know who had flatters then. I might have been the first.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe because there was a lot of people that weren't making the transition. So like Trish, it took her a while to like really start to teach yourself and learn years later. And then even some of the people I remember, like Pam Rambo, who colored Preacher,
right?
Like just for whatever reason wasn't gonna do it or didn't want to do it or couldn't figure out how to do it. And like I remember having conversations with her on the phone that were like in hindsight kind of make you feel bad years later, because she was just like, I was like, look, I don't, like we don't have any work. Like we can't hire you. Even if I wanted to hire you, I couldn't hire you. Like DC got to a point where they wouldn't let us hire people doing hand stuff anymore. And
it didn't make sense.
No, and it got to be, it was really like sort of, and it's like, I don't, is she still in the business? Does she still do stuff? I don't even know, but it's like, she did like the whole run of Preacher, and it was like,
because we sept Preacher, and I think we did 100 bullets. But that, because I looked at that as a business opportunity, I'm like, I'll train some people to do this, and then we can start sepping for them.
Right.
But, it was one of those things that, and it did pay a lot more to do it all, but it took so much longer until, we figured out the whole flatting game. And I'm sure there was, that was a high thought then. I'm sure there was 10 of us probably that all came to that conclusion, or probably within the same few years.
I'd
like to ask Matt and, early guys like Olaf about that. I'm sure they were doing it, because Olaf kind of, he's the guy. He's probably the godfather of all that, in my opinion. I'm sure at Wildstorm he had flatters. I bet you Alex would know.
Yeah, I mean, there were the studio, like Wildstorm had those guys coming through there, like Jeremy Cox and, all those guys that sort of, were getting like this institutional knowledge that was being passed down from like Sinclair and some of those other guys.
Yeah, they were the best.
I mean, that was the thing. I know, and that's the thing. I mean, that's one of the things that, I feel bad about, like when I, the changes at places like DC, it's like this loss of like the institutional knowledge like that is definitely, I mean, it's definitely a loss, We
have YouTube.
Yeah, well, there you go. YouTube.
Listen, if you have like a tumor, I could watch a video and take that tumor out of you.
I was just watching it this morning about fixing this garage door that I have down. So as soon as this is over, I'm going over to Home Depot and getting this part, and I'm going to fix this garage door that I have that's suddenly like not working.
See, you didn't need an institution to figure that out. So
that's
your
true.
point
You're right. You're right.
Was wrong.
I know it was.
You know, Boomer, you got to get on with it. Quit farming whale oil to light your lantern.
Your horse whip buggy operation.
Yeah, you sound like a lunatic.
I know. Sorry.
So it was sort of basically a guessing game back then. You didn't have a mentor really, or people. Everybody was sort of figuring.
I think so, but
times.
Olaf was the guy, though. We knew they were, you know, they were ahead of it. But you're right. There was no one to really talk to. I think Hollingsworth's the only one I got to talk to, and then I had another friend who was really good in Photoshop, and this is Photoshop 1. It was just Photoshop. You know, first version, no layers. You had to work in channels, no history. You know, on a shitty Mac 2CI that had like 40 megs of storage. You know, like 8 megs of RAM. You know, it was that. Then that was tough too, following the tech, right? Like when the G3 came out, where I was like, holy cow, this thing's fast. I don't have to, you know, wait. You do a fill and you'd wait 3 seconds. So you're just waiting. It would take me, I started PDFing books because I had a friend in publishing who they would PDF. And I remember talking like Allison Gill at DC, and I was like, you know, if we PDF this, you could save rip time, but it took forever. And you know, you can't edit the PDF, but it would take me, I don't know, 2.5 hours just to make a PDF, just in runtime.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I used to get paid to burn CDs.
Right. Right.
Paid for scanning.
No, I remember the scanning fee.
CDs. No, we used to send file on zip drives. There's iQuest, then zip disks, then CDs, and I had a CD burner. Oh, buddy. Then I had a scanner.
Oh my God. When I first started, they would take we used to have bike messengers that would run the pages down to this place to rainbow it and like shoot it onto photo paper. Like, you know, like they literally there were bike messengers taking the original art and biking it to this other place in like Midtown that would shoot like photostat all of the pages. And then they would send you back these giant rolls of this like thick, shiny photo paper crap, you know, and like check the proofs and stuff.
Ripping the film.
Right, right.
Because we were scanning hundreds of pages a month. I bought a scanner, and Vanessa hit me up from production. She's like, if you buy a scanner, I will pay you to scan. And I was like, done. I'm getting an intern to scan. Actually, a friend of mine, I was like, move here. You're my scan guy.
Hey, Lee, thank you very much for coming on and giving us some insight into the history and also the process that you go through. So,
all right. Thanks, man.
Thanks,
Lee.
And
all right.
I'll be talking to you later.
Thanks, buddy. See you.
Bye.